welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're with us today because we have a, well, slightly different kind of mission for this one.
Yeah, usually we're dissecting a book or, a piece of research that's already out in the wild.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But today, we are giving you an exclusive, incredibly detailed preview of a musical release that hasn't even dropped yet.
A true sneak peek.
It really is. I mean, I'm looking at a fascinating stack of materials on the desk right now.
Oh, yeah. It's quite a stack.
We've got press releases, artist manifestos, track lists, and some really striking visual art.
It's a lot to go through.
It is, and they all center around a forthcoming album called Beyond the Wardrobe, a cinematic fantasy saga.
What a title.
I know, right? And this marks the monumental 60th anniversary release from an independent label called Affartos.
60th release? That's a huge milestone.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, the creator is making a fairly bold claim.
They really are.
They are explicitly stating that this is not background music.
Right.
They are calling it an acoustic portal directly into the world of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah, that phrase, acoustic portal, really dictates how the label expects you to interact with this project.
How so?
Well, they're essentially saying, please do not put this on a Bluetooth speaker while you're doing the dishes,
Right. It's not laundry folding music.
Exactly. They want you to sit down and experience it as a deliberate, transformative journey.
It's asking for a real investment of your time and your attention.
It is.
And the timeline for this release is literally right around the corner.
Super close.
To orient you, today is March 4, 2026. The album actually just went up for pre-order a few days ago on March 1st.
Yep.
But the official full release date you'll want to circle on your calendar is April 10th, 2026.
April 10.
And the label released some visual materials alongside this announcement.
The cover art.
Yes, the cover art, which is honestly doing a lot of heavy lifting to set the mood here.
Oh, absolutely. It's gorgeous.
Picture this. You're looking at an illustration of a deep, snowy winter forest.
Just thick with snow.
Yeah, the trees are heavily weighed down by frost. And right in the center, there's this lonely, ornate lamppost glowing warmly against the snow.
Iconic imagery.
Totally. And your eye is naturally drawn past the trees to the background, where a majestic, towering castle sits high on a mountain peak.
And the sky?
The sky is incredible. The entire night sky above it is illuminated by sweeping greens and blues of the aurora borealis.
From the northern lights.
Right. And across this image, you have the label name, Affartos, the main title, Beyond the Wardrobe, a cinematic fantasy saga.
And that subtitle.
Yeah, the subtitle lays it all out. Orchestral winter mystery, inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia.
What's fascinating here is how deliberately that cover art constructs the emotional architecture of the entire album.
Emotional architecture, I like that.
Yeah, because it's not just a generic fantasy landscape, right? It's quite literally a map of the listener's journey.
Oh, that's interesting. Walk us through that map.
We'll take that glowing lamppost.
Right, the Narnia lamppost.
In the Narnia mythology and in this musical narrative, it represents the exact threshold between mundane reality and the unknown.
It's the point of no return.
Exactly. And that distant, illuminated castle.
Which clearly represents Cair Paravel.
Right. That serves as the ultimate destination. The visual is telling you up front that you are going to start in the cold, disorienting woods and end up in a place of arrival and majesty.
Wow. You can practically feel the temperature drop just looking at it.
You really can.
But, to really grasp why someone would dedicate an entire orchestral saga to Narnia, we need to look at the architect behind the Affartos label.
The man behind the music.
Right. His name is Andrey Brener. He's a composer and multi-instrumentalist.
And the label name, Affartos, that translates to incorruption in Greek.
Incorruption, right?
Mm.
Which definitely hints at his philosophical approach to music.
Oh, for sure.
And he is incredibly prolific.
Very much so.
The label started in Kaliningrad in 2020, and by this spring of 2026, they are hitting a catalog of 32 albums.
32 albums in 6 years is no joke.
It's staggering. And he's done ambient works, rock ballads, vocal tracks in multiple languages.
A huge variety.
But Beyond the Wardrobe seems completely distinct from all of that.
It really stands apart.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The origin story of this specific album isn't just about being a fan of C.S. Lewis.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It's deeply tied to Brener's Aliyah.
The repatriation.
Right. Aliyah is the term for his physical and spiritual repatriation to Israel. And this happened right as he turned 50 years old.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see why an adult would use a childhood fantasy to process a massive, real-world geographical move.
Relocating at 50 is a huge deal.
A monumental upheaval. You are leaving everything familiar and stepping into an alien landscape where you might not know the rules or the language.
Just like Lucy stepping into the wardrobe.
Psychologically, it is exactly like stepping through a wardrobe into an unknown world.
That makes perfect sense.
The materials actually detail this moment when Brener arrived in Israel.
Right, the arrival story.
It was 5 a.m. He stepped off a bus in the city of Haifa and was immediately struck by the sheer, towering cliffs above him and the unfamiliar sound of the birds.
Just a complete sensory overload.
Completely. And from there, he physically ascended Mount Carmel.
Wow.
He described that hike not just as a walk, but as a point of acclimatization.
A spiritual acclimatization.
Yes. It was a place where he shed old religious dogmas, systems, and what he called the fog of other people's prophecies.
The fog of other people's prophecies, that's a powerful phrase.
It is. He said up on that mountain, he finally found absolute clarity.
That's a profound transition, to go from the fog of your old life into absolute clarity on a mountaintop.
It's life-changing.
And after that ascent, he made his way down to the Mediterranean coast and settled in a quiet town called Nahariya.
Nahariya, yeah.
The imagery he uses to describe this period is just so evocative.
Tell us about it.
He talks about sitting on a bench on the Nahariya promenade, wearing his headphones, literally catching inspiration from the sea breeze.
Just taking it all in.
Right. And for him, Nahariya became his real-world Cair Paravel.
The destination.
Yes. It was the physical place where this lifelong search for peace finally materialized.
Exactly. He found his anchor, but here is the challenge.
What's that?
It's one thing to have a massive spiritual awakening on a mountain.
True.
It's an entirely different thing to sit down in a studio and successfully translate that feeling into audio.
Right. You can't just record a spiritual awakening on your smartphone and call it a day.
Yeah, you definitely can't.
The execution has to match the inspiration. And looking at the studio specifications, he went to extreme lengths to capture this.
He really did. They are utilizing what the label calls their gold standard production specs.
Gold standard.
Yeah. For instance, they highlight the use of 4K audio.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there. Most people hear 4K and think of television screens, right?
Yeah.
Like visual resolution. What does 4K mean when we're talking about an audio recording?
It's a great question. In audio engineering, referring to something as 4K usually means they are recording at incredibly high sample rates and bit depths.
So, better than a CD.
Far beyond standard CD quality. It essentially gives the sound a massive dynamic range.
What does that mean for the listener?
It means the absolute quietest sound, like a finger sliding across a cello string, is captured with the exact same pristine clarity as the loudest booming bass note.
Oh, wow.
But digital clarity can sometimes sound cold or sterile.
Too perfect, maybe.
Exactly. So to counter that, Brener deliberately ran the digital tracks through analog tape emulation.
Ah, to give it that warmth.
Yes, it adds tiny microscopic imperfections and warmth back into the sound, making it feel organic.
That's brilliant.
And they also mixed it with 5.1 surround simulation.
Which is why they insist you use headphones.
Right, it tricks your brain into feeling like the orchestra is sitting in a three-dimensional circle around your chair rather than just playing directly into your left and right ears.
That makes total sense. And the discipline required to put this together sounds brutal.
Oh, his process is intense.
Brener apparently writes up to 50 different arrangements for a single piece of music and tosses 49 of them out.
That's incredible dedication.
It is. Only one pearl actually survives the curation process to make it onto the album. That's months of work just left on the cutting room floor.
It's an intense process of distillation. He's actively stripping away anything that doesn't serve the narrative.
Which brings me to a detail I completely geeked out over.
Oh, yeah.
Because it sounds like a massive risk to me. The style he chose for this, the orchestral winter mystery style,
Right.
it has almost no traditional drums.
No traditional drums at all.
There is no snare, no kick drum, no heavy percussion driving the beat.
Which is incredibly rare for a cinematic fantasy album. Usually, composers rely on massive taiko drums to build tension and momentum.
Exactly. So how do you drive the music forward without a drum kit?
It's a tricky problem to solve.
The notes say the rhythm is entirely carried by the string section.
Interesting.
They specifically mention the use of rhythmic cello ostinatos and the pizzicato plucking of the double bass.
Let's break those terms down because they are crucial to the album's texture.
Please do.
An ostinato is just a fancy musical term for a stubborn, repeating rhythm.
Like a loop.
Yes, like a loop that continuously drives the track forward without ever needing a drum.
Okay, got it.
And pizzicato means the string players are physically plucking the thick strings with their fingers instead of bowing them.
And the reason he does this is brilliant.
Why is that?
He uses that plucked, repeating rhythm because it specifically mimics the sound of cautious, heavy footsteps crunching in deep snow.
Oh, wow. That is so evocative.
Isn't it? It forces the listener to slow down and walk at the exact pace of the story.
He's literally pacing your footsteps.
Yes. And the narrative is meticulously structured across 13 tracks, broken into 4 distinct acts.
Let's walk through how he builds that world, because it really does function like a script. Act 1 covers the first 3 tracks.
Right, they call Act 1 the transition mystery.
Fitting title.
It features tracks like Shadows of the Attic, The Wooden Passage, and the title track, Beyond the Wardrobe.
Setting the stage.
And the tempo here is very deliberate. These tracks sit at exactly 65 beats per minute.
Which is a very specific choice.
Why 65?
For context, 65 beats per minute is roughly the resting heart rate of a relaxed adult.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, before the music even fully registers consciously, the tempo is subconsciously telling your body to calm down, lower your guard, and settle in.
Wow. I didn't even put that together.
It's physical manipulation through audio.
Over that relaxed tempo, they use the glittering sound of a celesta.
The keyboard instrument.
Right, the one that sounds like magical bells. They use it to mimic falling snow.
Beautiful.
And the main melody is played on a solo flute and an instrument called a duduk. Have you ever heard a duduk?
Oh, I have. It's an ancient Armenian double reed woodwind instrument.
Elbow reed, okay.
Yeah, it has this incredibly mournful, breathy quality. It almost sounds like a crying human voice.
Yes. The materials describe it as a lyrical Mr. Tumnus-style melody.
Oh, that's perfect.
It perfectly captures that specific feeling of pushing past the heavy fur coats in the wardrobe and realizing you are suddenly standing in a freezing forest.
That initial awe.
But you don't stay in that peaceful state for long.
No, you don't. Because Act 2, which spans tracks 4 through 6, is titled Winter Exacerbation.
Exacerbation, meaning things are getting worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Musically, the rigid 65 BPM rhythm completely melts away.
It just drops out.
The structure shifts into a free tempo environment. It feels weightless and liquid. Brener introduces the Celtic harp playing water-like arpeggios.
And an arpeggio is when, instead of strumming a chord all at once, you play the notes individually so they ripple upward, right?
Exactly. It creates a cascading, flowing effect.
Very fluid.
But alongside the harp, he uses a glass harmonica.
A glass harmonica.
Yeah. If you've ever rubbed your wet finger around the rim of a crystal wine glass to make it sing,
Oh, sure, I've done that.
the glass harmonica is essentially a mechanical version of that.
Oh, fascinating.
It's a series of spinning glass bowls that you play with wet fingers. It produces an incredibly eerie, ethereal friction sound.
It sounds beautiful, but also slightly unsettling.
Which is exactly the point. Act 2 is building a subtle, creeping tension.
The White Witch.
Exactly. You have the fragile, hypnotic magic of the frost, but it's layered with the creeping anticipation of the White Witch. It represents a winter that has been unnaturally frozen in time.
It's beautiful, but it's wrong.
Precisely.
It's the calm before the storm. Which leads us into Act 3, Awakening and Battle.
Here comes the conflict.
This act is fascinating because track 7, The Lullaby of Narnia, drops down to an even slower 50 BPM.
50 BPM, that's very slow.
Extremely slow. It has a Celtic folklore style with dual harmonizing flutes, and this is such a great auditory detail, the soft analog hiss of a fireplace crackling in the background.
The fireplace hiss, that's great.
It feels incredibly safe, like you're hiding out in the Beaver's Dam.
But then track 8 hits, titled Battle and Ice.
Right.
And that coziness is violently ripped away.
And this goes back to my earlier question. How do you score a battle scene without heavy drums?
You do it through stark, jarring contrasts.
Contrast.
Yeah, instead of drums, Brener uses sharp, ice-cracking cymbals, an ominous, heavy, low piano, and a sinuous, twisting oboe melody.
Sounds chaotic.
It is. There is even a distant musical wolf howl integrated into the strings.
Wow. A musical wolf howl.
It creates a chaotic, terrifying clash between the freezing grip of winter and the desperate, violent hope for spring.
It sounds incredibly intense.
Very much so.
But right after that conflict, we reach what the creator calls the absolute sacral center of the album. Track 9, titled The Old Magic.
The turning point.
And technically, this track is doing something very unusual.
It is. The documentation points out that this specific composition is intentionally tuned to 432 hertz.
Can you explain that simply? Because I'm sure some listeners are lost.
Sure. Most modern Western music is tuned to a standard of 440 hertz.
Okay.
That's the frequency that determines the pitch of the note A.
So all the instruments tuned to that A.
Right. But tuning down slightly to 432 hertz is a practice often used in ambient and meditative audio.
Why is that?
Well, in audio circles, 432 hertz is associated with a deeper, more harmonizing resonance within the human body. It literally vibrates differently in your chest.
So he's changing the fundamental physics of the music for this one track.
Exactly. To convey the profound gravity of ancient sacrifice and rebirth, the turning point of the deep magic, he strips away almost all the high frequencies.
Kicking away the treble.
Yes. He relies on a heavy, deeply emotional solo cello, cinematic sub-bass that you feel more than you hear, and extremely low, vibrating male Gregorian chants.
Gregorian chants, that paints a picture.
And the reverb applied to the track is designed to mimic the acoustic space of a massive, ancient stone church.
Oh, wow.
It represents the darkest but most vital moment of the entire saga.
That is such a brilliant way to use audio engineering to tell a story. You don't just hear the deep magic. Your body physically resonates with
It's
it.
visceral.
But thankfully, this story doesn't end in the dark.
No, it doesn't.
Act 4 is all about triumph and homecoming. The final 4 tracks pick the pace back up to a heroic 75 BPM.
Moving forward again.
The titles alone tell the story. Crowning of the kings, high kings and queens, the 4 crowns, and the grand finale, the golden throne of Cair Paravel.
The darkness is completely gone by this point. The texture of the music totally shifts.
Right. We suddenly get majestic, wordless boy soprano vocals, bringing this pure, heavenly brightness to the mix.
So light returns?
He brings in regal pipe organs, crystalline bells, and French horns playing these wide ascending melodies. It's the sound of ultimate victory.
It is. But the way Brener chooses to end this epic saga is, I think, a masterstroke of thematic closure.
The ending is very special.
The notes describe the final moments of that 13th track.
Track 13, yeah.
You have these huge, triumphant orchestral swells with a long, shimmering reverb tail fading out on distant trumpets.
Classic cinematic ending.
But as the orchestra fades, it doesn't just go to silence.
What happens?
It seamlessly crossfades into a real-world field recording of the ocean surf hitting the beach at the Nahariya promenade.
Wow. So the sound of Narnia literally dissolves into the actual sound of Brener's real-world home.
Precisely. The journey comes full circle.
That's beautiful.
It merges his spiritual Aliyah, his physical journey to Israel, with the fantasy world he loves so much.
The two worlds meet.
The final message of the album isn't about Narnia at all. It's communicated entirely through the sound of the ocean, and that message is simply, I am home.
So what does this all mean?
It's a big question.
We started this deep dive looking at a preview for a fantasy concept album, but it's clear we are looking at something far more layered.
Much more.
We've just explored how an artist took a childhood love for a fantasy book and used it as the psychological framework to process a massive 50th year life transition and a move across the world.
It's an incredible coping mechanism, really.
Andrey Brener didn't just write background music about a magical wardrobe.
No.
He used the emotional vocabulary of Narnia, the fear of the winter forest, the battle for spring, the triumph of Cair Paravel to explain his own search for peace and clarity in Nahariya.
It is a really fascinating approach to acoustic storytelling.
And as a reminder, if you want to experience this journey yourself, you'll want to mark your calendars for the official release of Beyond the Wardrobe on April 10th, 2026.
April 10th.
Grab a good pair of headphones, find a quiet room, and see where the music takes you.
This raises an important question, one that the Affartos label actually poses to us in their manifesto.
What's the question?
They claim that in our modern, hyper-connected, endlessly distracting world, music might be the absolute last wardrobe left for adults.
The last wardrobe. I love that.
It might be the last widely accessible portal we have to enter a state of pure, unadulterated imagination.
That's a powerful thought.
So as you go about your week, I want you to reflect on this. In your own busy, demanding routine, what ordinary objects, daily habits, or seemingly quiet moments might actually be undiscovered portals to your own profound creativity, just waiting for you to turn the handle and step through?